Hey, nerds. So, going to continue my series on the book by infamous, I would say, Russian Imperialist Nationalist, and arguably definitely a fascist too, Alexander Dugin, who's been famous for spreading his dumb opinions, which he changes depending on who he's talking to. His, well, not dumb opinions, but specious opinions, where he sounds like a post-structuralist and an anti-capitalist, and he uses that sort of rhetoric in order to cloak his intent for new world order controlled by Russian nationalist imperialist fascism, basically the style of what Putin wants to do. And it's been exaggerated that Dugin is so-called Putin's brain, but he is a philosopher that has some extremely authoritarian views that he, like I said, he adapts to his relevant audience. Sometimes he tries to make them sound more moderate depending on who he's talking to and how he wants to seem. But if he's talking to more radical people who are more in agreement with him about his the more radical aspects of his ideology, he then he sounds way more extreme, obviously. You can see that and better than anywhere else in some sections of his book right here. Of course, he gets into the stupid idea of the Great Reset. So this book is the Great Reset versus the Great Awakening. And so a lot of people have heard of the Great Reset, right? This is a stupid idea that somehow Marxist billionaires and world leaders at the Economic Forum, like King Charles and Klaus Schwab and fucking politicians and world leaders, like I said, they're going to engineer a great reset in which they have a global society in which they own everything, no one else owns anything, and they're going to engineer this with woke DEI and forcing people to become trans and shit, which is obviously a fucking ridiculous claim. And let's see how incredibly hyperbolic he gets about liberalism here. Okay, so liberalism, extremism, crime, suicide, and hatred. What all liberals do today is suicide, so we should stop them. We should overcome them. No liberalism. It must be put aside. Liberalism is today's name for fascism. If in the past we demonized fascism, now the word liberal should be an insult. You see that? The word liberal should be an insult. Yeah. I'm not a liberal. I think there are plenty of valid criticisms of liberalism, but with the ideology that he doesn't always spell out is a lot fucking worse than liberalism. And let's see how much more hyperbolic he gets here. Ridiculously so. Okay, if in the past we demonized fascism, now the word liberal should be an insult. If you are a liberal, you are subhuman. You are less than human. You are a diseased creature, a perverted creature. Do you see this fucking literally dehumanizing language? If you're liberal, you're a subhuman, diseased, perverted creature. This reminds me of the type of language that my boy, 70s pervert post-structuralist philosopher Foucault talks about in the history of sexuality, and that the lower class peasants, it was seen that they had this sexuality, this dirty, perverted, sinful nature. And if you were a gay person, or even if you were a heterosexual couple who did quote unquote gay behavior, like anal sex, then you were considered a pervert. And that means that your descendants would be genetically and biologically flawed due to your sin, which was confirmed by the state, by the scientific institution of science and the institution of religion at that time, and the institution of the state. So that's actually another completely different critique of, you could say it's liberalism, but of course it's from the completely opposite end of the spectrum. And like I said, he gets ridiculously fucking hyperbolic, even more so than he does here. So if you're a liberal, you are subhuman, you are less than human, you are a diseased creature, a perverted creature, and you are a criminal because you are fueling civil war, social injustice, occupation, colonization, Dehumanization. Liberalism is a crime against humanity, worse than fascism and communism. See, he literally said worse. Liberalism is worse than fascism and communism. I think the worst thing he said, even more so than you are diseased, subhuman, perverted creature if you're liberal, that liberalism itself is a crime against humanity. So not only to Dugin, not only are liberals subhuman, diseased, perverted creatures, but liberalism is a crime against humanity worse than communism and fascism. Can you fucking believe this shit? Like, these claims are so ridiculous, they don't even really deserve to be refuted, but they're obviously stupid. Like, what he doesn't even actually support any of this with evidence or arguments either. But let's finish the paragraph here. That doesn't mean we should restore fascism or communism. That's 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 good right there to know. But he does these like strategic disclaimers all the time, I would say, to make it seem like he doesn't actually have that ideology. But he does spell it out even more than this. Like, not just how much he thinks liberalism is fucking evil and disgusting, but the type of ideology that he actually advocates for. He gets more into that in his other books. So anyway, let's continue. That doesn't mean we should restore fascism or communism. They were totalitarian regimes. We should put them aside as well. Totally agree with that. But like I said, he's arguably not being honest with that. But even if he is, let's give him credit and say that it is. That's the only good aspect so far. They were totalitarian regimes. We should put them aside as well. They belong to the past. And liberalism is the real danger, the real criminal system of the world order that still exists. The criminal system of world order is liberalism. Yeah, that's just fucking conspiratorial bullshit. Like, the whole world is run by liberals. Obviously, in various governments throughout the world, whether you're a liberal or not depends on innumerable different factors, and there are various leaders throughout many countries throughout the entire world who are not liberals and are in fact extremely conservative. And obviously Trump won the election, which means that the Americans control all fucking mighty America with Captain Fat Dumbass, right? So anyway, I just think that the main point of this to me is that, like, he is so goddamn morally disgusted by liberalism. I I only I understand being morally disgusted by fascism and communism. I understand that. But liberalism is, like, to me, by definition, way less extreme than both of those. And I don't the it's like it's art. I don't think you can objectively say with this one way or the other, but I would say that it's not, let's say, yeah, it's definitely not objectively. I'm not saying it objectively is not. I'm saying it is not at all objectively the case that that liberalism is today's fascism. It should be demonized. Liberals are subhuman, disease, perverted creature, and liberalism is a crime against humanity worse than fascism and communism. Obviously, that's a bunch of fucking bullshit. Liberalism, it has maybe even arguably some fundamental flaws like all political ideologies, but you don't need to, like, fucking say, this begs the crucial question, what's the alternative? It's his Russian nationalism, whether, and like I said, he admits that in some places, but not in other places. So anyway, yeah, fucking get over yourself, Alexander Dugin. Jesus Christ. Like, liberalism aren't subhuman, perverted, disease creature, and liberalism is sure as fuck not a crime against humanity worse than fascism and communism. Give me a break, man.